And to break down the details of that ruling for us, I'm joined by our legal correspondent, Dionne Jackson Miller. Dionne, one of the major sticking points in that ruling is how many hours did they actually work? That's one of the major things that came out of that ruling.
Well, for that, you have to look back at the 2008 Heads of Agreement,
Right.
because it was in 2008 that the government and the Police Federation agreed that the police would work a 40-hour work week and get overtime. Problem was that there was no system in place to accurately calculate the overtime. So as Jamila reported there, the police agreed to accept an interim payment for 10 hours of overtime while the government agreed to implement the system to calculate overtime. Here we are 14 years later, the system isn't in place. And it's always, I think, important when you say the court chastised the executive, and I would say that that is what happened here in the judgment, because the agreement, the promise that the government made and never kept, was rolled over from heads of agreement to heads of agreement. And the court commented on the fact that these promises hadn't been fulfilled and said that these are the things that contribute to existing deficits of trust in society, and that social scientists may one day consider the implications for governance. That's as close to a reprimand as you're going to get from the force. But you are asking me in relation to the payments and what exactly was agreed. Well, that was the whole point. There was no system in place to accurately calculate the overtime. So the system was supposed to do that, the new system. So what the court said that, hey, you're coming now, you're trying to claim these 14 years of overtime, but you can't, because the 10 hours of overtime that you agreed to, the court said will constitute what they call liquidated damages. And liquidated damages is a predetermined amount that the parties decide on at the beginning in case a contract is breached. And the court said that, therefore, you agreed to this, so you can't claim compensation at this stage.
All right. So I know that you spoke with Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark early on today, and he did explain the process going forward. If you can just expound on a little bit of that for us.
Well, one of the orders that the court made was that this new system should be put in place by March, 31st of March 2023. That's next year, March. It's important to point out, though, that this came out of evidence that was given at the trial. A government representative gave evidence in court to say, hey, a budgetary allocation was made to put this system in place. Work has started on it, and it's expected to be put in place by March. So the court order was really in accordance with the evidence that had been given in court. And what the finance minister said is, hey, the courts have said here that the heads of agreement constitute binding contracts. What we have to do on the part of the government is to be very careful about the promises that are made during these negotiations. We can't be making promises that we're not able to keep.
Finally, another major takeaway, certainly for a lot of people, is the fact that here you have agents of the state, so to speak, challenging the government. So would you say that this is unprecedented?
I wouldn't say it's unprecedented, but I certainly think it's significant. And the fact that it only happened after 14 years, that you had repeated heads of agreement and the Federation would give extensions and the government would once again promise, showed you how long the police held off on this and how frustrated they must have been at the point where they finally decided that their only recourse was to go to court.
All right. Thank you so much. Our legal correspondent, Dionne Jackson Miller. Thank you so much, Dionne.